Let's have a talk, let's have a chat, talking about a little this and that. Hello and welcome to another episode of This and That. I am your host, Mary Easterling, and today we are continuing with Roots. This will be part 2. But before I begin, to listen to Roots part 1 on This and That, go to talkingaboutthistandthat.wordpress.com and click on the podcast link. We left off talking about the belief systems of Word of Faith and Dominion movement would derail our theological context. And they're enough to derail the common unread Christian off the rails, or rather, the rock of confession and true belief. So we continue. Now let's connect some dots to the current POTUS. You know, what does this have to do with 2026? You see, when he got in the first time, I was actually told why, but I didn't understand what I was being told. All fine. But the first run was to get the setups in place for the second run. It's the, if I ever get back in, nah, here we go. The biggest reason, by the way, that POTUS so wanted the concurrent elections was that he knew or suspected, that it's possible his mind and body were not going to last through a later 4-year term, which if you listen to the pundits out there, it's starting to appear as though he might not, mentally, if not physically. Thus, he can't give up to the people who put him in that wonderland what they so desire. If he can't outlast, he can't deliver. The problem is our pesky Constitution. Moreover, the states have theirs. Constitution of Florida, Constitution of Minnesota, constitutions of the state. That's right. And in most of them, there really is no place for the world according to modern churchiology. And Artie just keeps giving up answers. And in here is the connection. Word of faith theology, dominion movement, and Christian nationalism are increasingly interconnected in modern American religion and political spheres, forming a coalition aimed at transforming the United States into a nation governed by a specific conservative interpretation of Christianity. These movements are driving a shift from traditional evangelicalism, get the gospel out, to more assertive, sometimes authoritarian forms of political engagement. You think? The intersection of belief systems. Word of faith, while primarily focused on prosperity and positive confession, its theology often overlaps with the belief that believers are intended to have authority and success in all areas of life, including the public square. The Dominion movement, or Dominionism, mandates that Christians take control of all aspects of society, often called the, quote-unquote, Seven Mountains Mandate, which include family, government, arts/entertainment, media, business, religion, and education. Media was how they took over government. They have their own search engines and news feeds and whatnot to uplift the mighty name of Jesus. Now, there's nothing wrong with uplifting that name when it comes with branding and a different gospel. Which Jesus are you talking about? Paul had that problem. Thing is, those people were Judaizers. Christian nationalism is the new Judaizer? Oh, that's just twisted. That's just twisted. Anyway, Christian nationalism is the political ideology that merges American identity with a specific, often white, evangelical Christian identity. It asserts that America was founded as a Christian nation and should operate as one, often pushing to codify, quote-unquote, Christian privilege into law. The key connections and characteristics. The Seven Mountains Mandate is the core strategy connecting the movements, advocating for Christians to seize control of 7 key areas of culture to prepare the world for Christ's return. New Apostolic Reformation, the NAR, is a movement that often acts as the nexus for these ideologies, featuring quote-unquote apostles and quote-unquote prophets who advocate for spiritual warfare to achieve political and cultural dominance, full stop. When you go into spiritual warfare, I'm immediately reminded of the things that Joshua and Caleb talked about. we're going back to the book of Moses. We're going back to what happened in the desert. And we're going back to the point where Moses said, okay, it's time to go take the land. And the first thing he does is very Egyptian. It's very warlord. And it's let's survey what we're getting into. So he sends out this group by twos. You go this way, you go that way, you go that way, you go that way. You know, they pick a direction, go in that direction, scope it out, look at the lay of the land, look at the people, look at the cities. Tell me what are we dealing with? Very, very much leaning on his upbringing, because Moses was not raised Hebrew, he was raised Egyptian. And they're no slouch. Egypt of that day, until God spanked it, wasn't a ne'er-do-well. It was a pretty big powerhouse. They had some very genius pharaonic strategists. Moses more than likely would have been alongside the crown prince as part of the military. And this is something you would do if you're intending to invade an area. And that's what they were intending to do, invade Canaan. Okay, so all of the data is gathered, and all the groups come back. And they bring this on two poles, a thing of great. Now, I don't know if it's that was such a huge cluster that they could carry down a pole, because it was too big to just carry. But, well, they actually, it's great. Do you want to carry it by hand? It's going to squish. So, yes, a fairly good size of the fruit. Look at the quality of this. Look at the size of this. Look at the amount strapped to a pole. So it's going to dangle, and it's not going to crush, okay? But mixed into this were two sets of reports. One set was, we don't want to do this. This is unfeasible. This is fortified stuff. Yeah, the fruit's good, but the people are huge. The giants are in the land. The giants from Noah's day. By that time, it was in the DNA. So some people were getting that harken fall back to the giantism stuff. Either that or these guys were just short. Slaves aren't all that well fed, so they might have been short. Either way, we looked like grasshoppers in their eyes and in our eyes. We were scared to death, Moses. We're not going over there and doing this. And two men came back and said, yeah, this is a tough act to follow, but their covering has been removed. Their gods will be undone by our God. That is your spiritual warfare. The idea was our God, who's been leading us along and been with us at Sinai and all of this, whom we're serving, we're worshiping, as long as we do what he wants, is going to go ahead of us, and he's going to blow through all this. He will conquer their deities, and their cover, their capacity, their spiritual covering will be removed. So when you get into spiritual warfare, you're talking about God stripping the covering of his enemies. His, not yours. That's the point. So when they get into spiritual warfare to achieve political and cultural dominance, that again is witchcraft. Thank you. Support for political leaders. These groups have formed a significant base for quote-unquote Trumpism, believing that God appoints leaders to advance their agenda. Prominent figures associated with this movement include Paula White, Sean Fucht, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that name correctly, it might be Fuke, and Charlie Kirk. Well, the ex-Charlie Kirk, somebody put a bullet through his neck. I don't know, maybe they thought he was talking out the side of his neck and decided to give him a new hole to talk out of. That didn't work, sort of silenced him. Which, by the way, the taking of anybody's life, if they did that to Donald Trump, would still be reprehensible, because it's the taking of a life. If anybody's going to be taking the life, leave it to the judicial system. They might incur the death penalty on POTUS. Who knows? Honestly, who knows? After he's POTUSed, that is. I doubt they're going to do anything while he's POTUSing. That's usually bad form. Okay, anti-democratic tendencies. Here's now. Democrats is of the devil. You're a Democrat? You're not a Christian. You defected from the faith. Can I ask you a question? Since when is a king of a kingdom who's not of this world going to give a rip snort what political party you are? Since never. Christianity does not depend on your politics. Keeping sane and safe might, but not your Christian walk. Know Jesus. Jesus knows you. Your kingdom. everything's fine. But no, not these people. Studies indicate that these movements are pushing American Christianity in a more authoritarianism and anti-democratic direction. The only other direction is the republic. Now, Trump said it. We now have a republic. Google that term. What is a republic? And you will find out that it is a by the people, for the people. The people are involved. The idea of democracy is sewn into a republic. If you want to go anywhere with this, liberalistic humanism sewed in the concept of a democratic republic because we had bipartisanism about that time. When this thing was founded, it was a republic. The people voted. They elected their leaders. The Senate was representing the states and the House was representing the people. And between the two of them, the grievances and the needs of the people got dealt with, as well as the grievances and the needs of the states. And then you became a professional politician. Used to be, you had your congresses would meet every so often, and then you were back at the back 40 doing the weeding and the hoeing and homesteading. That's right. Colonials homesteaded. You have to think about the history of this nation. It ain't what you think it is. All right. Justification of violence. There are some factions within these movements, particularly in the contents of the and now this, by the way, AI calls it this, January 6th insurrection. When your artificial intelligence is telling you that what you did is an insurrection, somebody programmed it wrong. We got to have educable Artie, dude, you can't use that word. You get POTUS in trouble. Artie, you can't use the word insurrection. Yeah, right. Tell it to the judge. In this case, AI seems to be the judge. Ooh. All right. Particularly in the contents of this, these factions have justified the use of political violence to achieve their goals. Nowhere in Scripture does Jesus say, violence is going to be my way. In fact, when you get to the chapter 19, all the nations gather, and he comes down, and we come with. We don't do any fighting, by the way. We're just sitting on horses in white. And he steps forward, and he just opens his mouth and utters, I don't know what it is, a sound, a bite, a word, something. And the hominids just drop dead. He doesn't even lift up a sword. He just speaks, and they're dead. Do you get it? How violently nonviolent is that? He speaks, and they're dead. What? But he's not being violent. He's just being final. So, specific influences and examples. Biblical basis for war, quote unquote. Documents have surfaced associated with figures like Matt Shea that outlined a theocratic and in some cases violent takeover of American society. Project 2025. Artie, Doodlebug, you linking this thing together? This is AI talking. This is our newest and bestest. It collates for your question the entirety of the Internet of things that are available, and it spits out an answer. And it doesn't take it very long to do that. Well, okay. Some of these movements are linked to or support the policy goals outlined in Project 2025, which aims to reorganize the federal government according to conservative Christian nationalist principles, the transformation of the public sphere. The goal is to move beyond mere influence to complete control, effectively ending or severely weakening the separation of church and state. No, folks, effectively ending. And if you think POTUS is bad, I'm cringing at thinking about the VP taking power. I'm not sure how he's going to pull it off, if he can pull it off. See, here's the problem. He's a Republican, and it seems as though whatever goes into the White House gets counterbalanced at the midterms 2 years into their time. The House flips over and usually goes the other way. So if you're a Republican coming in with a Republican House, for the first 2 years, you get a lot of stuff done. I mean, stuff just gets done. And then the vote comes through and it flips Democrat, and your last 2 years are a lame duck. If you're a Democrat and you had a Democrat Congress, for the first 2 years, you get a lot of stuff done. And then it flips Republican, and you're a lame duck. By the way, this is an intentional political ploy. It's a power brokerage, and it isn't Christian. It's boys being boys. It's politicians being politicians. Yeah, that's the way it goes. If we have a Democratic Congress in the House that flips under POTUS, and POTUS defaults to the VP, becomes POTUS, that's the same House he has to work against for the first 2 years of if he gets back in. And if these people have anything to say about it, he will. Because now they've gotten Doge. Doge got into everything and got the keys. Doge can manipulate one hellacious a lot of stuff and whitewash it and gaslight you and make you sing you the siren song to believe. That's why you're supposed to listen to the voice of the Holy Spirit. He'll give you that discernment that says, no, not buying it. Something's off. I don't know why, but something's not right here. That's right. The coalition of Word of Faith, Dominionism, and Christian nationalism represents a potent, politically active, and often exclusive vision for America, aiming for a society where a particular rigid version of Christianity dictates public policy and social norms. And that's not going to be the biblical one. Note this, and it's a thing right now. It's right now going in the congressional speak. Anti-democratic tendencies. And they want to go in an authoritarian and anti-democratic direction. Why authoritarianism? Because Torah law is authoritarian. It is God directly governing a people. This is not democratic. We get no say in the matter. So aren't we grateful he's such a quote-unquote nice being? But these guys are not putting in that Torah. They're putting in their brand of what they believe Jesus is. And the kingdom, Jesus will rubber stamp. Because like we have spoken into the atmosphere, and our way shall be done. This is another gospel, another Christ, and it is the perfect political ploy for beast number 2. Do you get it? Beast number 1 hasn't shown up yet, but beast number 2 certainly has. It's alive and kicking. It always was. Church. It's why we have a state, a separation between the two. We don't actually, but we do. Congress cannot make laws regarding religion. That's it. There will be an amendment stating that religion cannot influence Congress. Bank on it, bet on it, and it'll be democratic because this Constitution to this nation is pretty doggone special. And those who are fair-minded are going to want to protect it from this. But the founders never saw this coming. They'd be rolling in their graves right now to see this. Are you kidding? If we resurrected that bunch, they'd look at us and say, "Thou art insane." Stop. Here's another issue. Justification for violent factions within the movement, particularly in the context of the insurrection, justify the use of violence to achieve goals. So then, what is the Torah of the movement? Glad you asked. It was screamed about in 2024, even as the rhetoric of messianic hope from Trump rang out, right down to the shot that didn't kill, like the wound that was quote-unquote fatal and healed. So enter this, Project 2025, which aims to reorganize the federal government according to conservative Christian nationalist principles. Right now, this is being done. In fact, there's a site where you can see the tracking process, and it's broken down as you click through it. Project2025.observer/EN. Right now, and we're only in the second year, it's 51% accomplished. But we do have hope in this nation, the Constitution. There is at the present no real way to remove it or for long to skirt it. Moreover, the party that nominated him is starting to turn on him. All of this is the perfect recipe for the perfect storm. It's the perfect seismos to shake this nation down to its core. Problem is, how far will this go and what will it do? Now, before I close, in the last episode, I mentioned something and said I was going to circle back to it, and this is where I'm going to circle back to it. I mentioned something called the law of attraction in conjunction with the positivism of word of faith. You know, if you speak it and confess it long enough, it will eventually manifest type thing. Yes, there's something known as the law of attraction. And so I went to good old Educable Artie, R-A-I, and typed in the law of attraction and witchcraft. So the law of attraction, L-O-A, and witchcraft both operate on the principle that focused intention, energy, and mindset can manifest desired outcomes in reality. Remember, Word of Faith says our words can manifest a reality we desire because just like God calls those things that are not as though they were, so can we. Which I keep saying is witchcraft. While often considered distinct, they share common elements like visualization and affirmation. Those I am statements that you're supposed to make daily. That's called affirmation. Witchcraft may use law of attraction as a tool for manifesting, while critics often view both as similar, focusing on personal empowerment to shape reality, like what Word of Faith is doing, the prosperity gospel does. And what dominionism does is put what we call feet to faith right. It puts boots on the ground. Key connection and differences. Similar mechanisms. Both practices involve using intent, belief, and energy to shape one's life. They both often employ tools like meditation, visualization, and affirmation to focus the mind. Quick question. Where is trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct your paths? Come into this? That's that pesky Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Where does that come into play? It doesn't. Action versus intention. Witchcraft often requires active ceremonial or ritualistic action alongside intent to bring about change, whereas some interpretations of law of attraction rely on passive, quote-unquote, attracting through positive thinking alone. My goodness, like Word of Faith does. They just say it. I think, I say, it becomes. Now, witchcraft uses active, ceremonial, and ritualistic actions. Yes, because they know how to get what they want. See, done correctly, this stuff works. If you go to the other side, to the Satan, the adversary of the advocate and creator, the king of evil. If you go over there, yes, demons will bow and count out. Thing is, once you get into that, eventually you find out the demons, they don't serve you. You end up serving them. Who's the whipping boy now? Who's the slave? Who's the bee? That's right. The hominid is. Always will be. So God sends His Son, His Word made flesh, to get us out of that problem, to deliver us from that. Get it? Roots in philosophy. The law of attraction is often seen as modern, quote-unquote, new thought concept, but its roots, as I said in the last episode, are tied to older esoteric traditions like Hermeticism. Witchcraft typically involves a deeper, more intentional connection to natural, spiritual, or elemental forces. So now, what is Hermeticism? Glad you asked. It's a philosophy system. It combines Greek philosophy, Egyptian religion, and astrology. It emphasizes the unity of God. Well, all right. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, they are one. But it also emphasizes the divine nature of humans. Well, we are made in His image, but we're not divine. Oh, problem. And the possibility of spiritual ascent or ascendance. Very, very new age. Critiques. Both are often sometimes criticized for quote-unquote toxic positivity, or in the case of law of attraction, for implying that individuals are solely responsible for negative events in their lives. Oh, but Word of Faith takes it one step further, and Negative Nancy has no faith. Get into that soup and find out the toxicity of shipwrecked faith. I ought to know. It's done a number on mine. But I'm out of that now. I'm recapturing the truth. That's why I can talk about this. Been there, done that. No, I'm not writing the book. Witchcraft and manifestation. For many practitioners, manifestation is not just a trend, but a core component of witchcraft. It is viewed as an active, magical practice that involves directing energy to influence the environment, often with more focus on the quote-unquote how the ritual, the tools, than standard law of attraction. Okay, the diverse perspectives of law of attraction. From the witch's perspective, they see it as a valid, albeit sometimes simplified, form of magic. The critical perspective, however, views the law of attraction as a form of quote-unquote hidden, or from a religious standpoint, quote-unquote forbidden, or, let me add this word, Gnostic knowledge that encourages individuals to act as their own gods. This is AI, folks. It encourages individuals to act as their own gods. That's the problem with this. It deals God, the Almighty, right out of the picture while proclaiming Him at the same time. In summary, they're not identical. The law of attraction and witchcraft both revolve around the power of the mind and intention to influence reality, often overlapping in their practices. The reason I bring up law of attraction is because that's what Word of Faith is using. And AI just told us that witchcraft will use this as a mechanism. That's why I keep saying this is a form of witchcraft. It's heresy. It's true and living heresy. It's error, it's whoredoms, and when you take it to boots on the ground and dominionism, and then you put it into the presidency and surround a president of a nation, any leader of any nation, with this, you see the danger? For you, real Christians, it's a trap, because eventually this becomes, you're not in this nation a citizen. You're not a member of this new kingdom on earth. You will not take our mark, whether it's a tattoo, whether it's a chip, whether it's, how about the brand marks of your soul? That's the most important mark you want to think about. Has Christ been crucified in you, or have you crucified yourself to someone else? Oh my. And that will do it for this episode of This and That. Until then.